That's a powerful intro right there. Woo, I hope you like it hot. Well, it is an honor to be back. I mean, I'm really excited to be opening up for Tim Tebow. I know he's not until the spring. That's like 5 months away, but that's close enough. That's how I'm going to say it on Twitter. At Jon Acuff, opening up for Tim Tebow. And Donald Trump opened up for me. Woo, ballin', YOLO. Oh, that is good living right there. I tell you, that is nice. And it is great to be back. I came here last year, and one of the ideas I talked about that I thought we could maybe put to rest last year was Jesus Jukes. I don't know if you remember that. It was this phrase I came up with to describe that moment when you're having a normal conversation with somebody and they try to juke in some Jesus out of nowhere. It happens to me all the time on Twitter. I thought when we talked about it, maybe you and I could collectively murder that thing, but it hasn't happened. I saw it happen with the Hunger Games. People would say, I'm so excited about seeing the Hunger Games tonight. And somebody would respond, you know what I'm excited about? Journaling during my quiet time. Just saying. And that's what a Jesus juke is. It's the Christian version of the Debbie Downer moment. Wah, wah. And I love that phrase, just saying. We Christians use that as a get out of jerk free card, don't we? We say the most horrible things, and then we put that phrase at the end like it makes the rest invisible. But when you think about it, who in the Bible would have loved that phrase, just saying? The Pharisees. Can't you see them saying that to Jesus? Oh, Jesus healed somebody. That is great, healed somebody. It is the Sabbath. Just saying. Just saying. That's a horrible phrase. We should not use it. I saw that with Whitney Houston. Somebody would say, I'm so sad about Whitney Houston dying. And somebody else would say, I wish we were this sad about Jesus dying. As if maybe Jesus is like, yeah, take that, Whitney. This is my day. I only talked to that woman at the well so she'd leave my well. I'm Jesus. I give and take away. I give and take away. So we need to stop doing Jesus jukes. That's one of the phrases I talk about. I also talk about worship leaders a lot because deep down I want to be one. Did you guys have that dude with the acoustic guitar at your summer camp? Did he go there too? Because I had this dude that would materialize anytime a campfire was started. Do you know him? And he always pretends like he doesn't know he has his guitar with him. Oh, it's on my back. Don't worry, ladies. I know 3 chords and 4 Chris Tomlin songs. We'll make out. And I wanted to be that guy, but I'm not cool enough to be a worship leader, so I started to write about worship leaders and how in Nashville we went through this metrosexual phase where they were wearing skinny jeans like lady jeans, Tom shoes, watched like land the space shuttle, a white belt, maybe even an unnecessary scarf, which is when you wear a scarf with a short sleeve t-shirt. That's a confusing body temperature message. It's like your neck is so cold I need a scarf, but my arms are too hot for sleeves. But what's happened in Nashville is that we've left Metro behind. We're now in Hipster. Like, has that hit here yet? Hipster mode? Like, the worship leaders that I'm friends with look like the lost son in Mumford & Sons. And I love Mumford & Sons because they're a great band to play Girlfriend or God with. Have you ever listened to their songs and played Girlfriend or God? You try to imagine, is he singing about his girlfriend or God? Like that song, I Will Wait. Is he waiting on God? Because next to journaling, that's our second favorite activity as Christians. We love to wait. Or is he waiting on his girlfriend to get ready for a date? It's very tricky. And so now all these worship leaders, they'll have suspenders and a vest, and they'll have a local chicken. Like they'll have their own chicken coop. Like a city chicken. And you go, what is that? And they want to know if the communion wafers are farm to table. Are those gluten-free? Are those local communion wafers? And so Hipster became really popular. And so I actually came up with what I call the How Hipster is Your Worship Leader scorecard. It's 94 points that you can score yourself on. And I was going to print up one for everybody, but there's a lot of everybody's in this. I don't know if you noticed that. It's a full space. So we actually created an ebook, and we haven't given it away yet, but I wanted to give it to you guys today. So if you'll pull up that slide. So if you want to get the official field guide to how hipster your worship leader is, go ahead and take out your phone. You can do it right now. I won't be insulted. I'll get a drink of water. I'll stand here and sip water casually. Go ahead and text it in. You can have the official How Hipster is Your Worship Leader guide. It's delightful. It tells you, is it raw denim? Is that worth more points? Do you have to peg your jeans? It's very specific. It's really, it's a gift. Put it back up. They're slow. I felt like it was a long drink of water. So we'll leave that up for a minute or two. But that's the stuff I've continued to write about. Funny stuff we do in church. Wishing you had a shirt that said, I direct deposit my tithe, that you could wear on Sunday mornings so that people wouldn't judge you. Because I hot potato that offering basket, and it looks like I hate sweet baby Jesus. And you can't yell, I direct deposit my tithe. That's awkward. So I started to write about all these awkward things. But in the last year, I've spent a lot of time at college campuses. I've been here a few times. I've been all over the country talking to college students. And I've noticed something that's kind of disturbing. And what I've noticed is that when I talk to chaplains, they'll tell me they have problems. And they'll say, whenever we talk about vocation or purpose or calling, the students will say things like this. I want to serve God. I love God. I want to serve his kingdom. But I love filmmaking. And do you see the problem there? Do you see what's happening? In our churches and our colleges, we're placing God over here on one side and our passions over here on the other side. As if there's only 2 or 3 ways to serve God with your skill. You can be a worship leader, a minister, or a youth minister. And it should say, I love God, I want to serve him, and I love filmmaking. And so how did we get there? How did we separate those 2 things, those 2 parts of ourselves? Where we've got our God over here and our passions and our dreams over here. How did we end up with such a boring God? And that's what the fear is. That's what the fear when I talk to college students. And I'll say, well, what if you gave God your hopes and your dreams, your after college dreams? And they'll say, everybody knows what happens if you give God your hopes and your dreams. The first thing he makes you do is sell everything you own and move to Guam and become a missionary. You go 0 to hut in like 4 seconds. And I just can't get down with huts. I don't like eating bugs. They're crunchy. It's not good. And so we're afraid. And so we hold back our dreams from this guy named God. And he's kind of boring. And then the world gets in, and the world is perfectly okay with you being average. The world is okay with you being average. And I saw this a few months ago. I was in Panama City Beach. Has anybody ever been there, Panama City Beach? There's a Walmart there that is kind of like Mad Max's Thunderdome. Like no rules, it's street justice, stuff's on fire in the aisles, clothing's optional. It's very dangerous. And I was there and I saw a display in the middle of Walmart that I'd never seen before. Can you pull that picture up, please? The Walmart photo? Okay, so here's what you see. There's 1,000 ping pong balls next to a stack of folding tables. And what you don't see in the corner is a big display of red Solo cups. Oh, no. As a Christian, I don't know what they're saying. I mean, maybe the executives in Arkansas are like, wow, college students sure do love ping pong at the beach. And after they play, they get thirsty for juice or vitamin D enriched milk. No. What Walmart said is, hey, if you want to binge drink, if you want to play beer pong, we want to make that easy for you. We want to sell you that experience in one place, one stop. And I'm not picking on Walmart. Here's what Winn-Dixie does. Can you show that photo? Oh! Look at that reload. It sounds like a vitamin. I can get the balls and the cups together. Oh! And then we sit here and ask college students like you, why is it hard to be on the straight and narrow? Because you go to buy cheese and they sell you beer pong cups. That's why it's hard. The world's okay with you being average. But God didn't create average, did he? God didn't create common. God didn't create ordinary. So what do you do if you kind of wake up to that and go, that's not where I'm going. That's not going to be my life. What do you do if you really want to dream with God and be part of his story? Well, there's 2 things I think you need to do, and that's what I want to talk about today. And the first thing you have to do, especially in college, because this is kind of this slingshot moment. You get that sense that this is like you're being pulled back. And I'm not going to buy into the whole, like, these are the best years of your life. That's a lot of pressure. Have you had people tell you that? Like, this is the best years of your life. The rest are going to suck. Like and people will tell you, hey, go to Europe while you can. Go while you can. Like, maybe Europe's closed when you're in your 30s. Like, you'll go over there and they'll be like, oh, you're 31, you need to go to Branson, Missouri. Have a good time. So I'm not going to put that pressure on college because that's a lot of pressure. And some of you get that. Some of you, every time you see a college brochure, everybody's got really nice teeth and they're riding a double bike like, ah. They're playing Frisbee in the quad with a dog that has a bandana on. And you go, man, college is the best years of your life. Okay, I'm a sophomore. It hasn't happened. Is that junior year? Is that when it gets awesome? So I'm not going to put that pressure on you, but this is an important time. And so there's 2 things I want you to do. One, I want you to listen for the little moments. I want you to listen for the little moments. You see, most of us, when it comes to dreaming, we want it to be like a Eureka moment. When it comes to figuring out our calling, we want to be walking across the street at 42 and boom, lightning. Beekeeping. Yeah. I mean, I've always appreciated honey as a concept on toast, but now I want to be a beekeeper and like get braids in my beard and blow smoke and bees. God has put a love in my heart. He has opened the eyes of my heart. I don't even know what that means. It's crazy sounding. There's eyes in my heart. He's put a hedge of protection and it's full of bees. We're going to do life together. We're going through a season. Bees. That's what we want. We want a Eureka moment. And so what happens is we stand up and we have these big discovery conversations and we say, what do I want to be when I grow up? What do I want to do after college? And every option is on the table, isn't it? Should I go to get a master's? Should I volunteer somewhere? Should I start my own nonprofit? What should I do? What should I do? And in that moment with that many options, most of us don't know where to start. We get a little paralyzed, so we stop and we put our dream back on the shelf. But what I've learned is that figuring out what you're called to do, figuring out what God put in your heart, isn't an act of discovery, it's an act of recovery, of rescuing something from your past that you loved and you lost. Something that life got too busy for, maybe something that someone who mattered to you told you didn't matter. And that happens, doesn't it? A friend of mine named Liz, she's in her 40s. She told me one day, when I was in the 8th grade, I used to love to dance. And one day my mom pulled me aside and said, hey, you're not going to be a professional dancer, right? That's not in the cards, right? Do you think Liz danced a whole lot after that moment? Of course not. And I get why that happens. I'm a parent. I've got 2 adorable kids. I know about the Disney Princess Cartel. I'm down. Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Snow White. Cinderella runs Disney like Jay-Z runs New York. I know princesses. Yeah. My keychain is princesses. Like my house key is the 3 princesses, which if you know I have daughters is adorable. If you don't know I have daughters, I'm a creeper. It's true. And as a parent, here's what you're afraid of. Here's what your parents are afraid of. They're afraid that you won't discover you can't sing until American Idol. They don't want you to show up at the X Factor and go, I've had 42 years of vocal lessons. Ah! But here's the problem with that. When a parent, when a professor, when a pastor, when a friend, when anyone tells you what you can't be, they're predicting a future they don't control. They don't control your future. They don't know what you look like at 25 or at 35 or at 45 or at 55. They don't. But they speak into that and we start to believe it, don't we? Some of you right now are in majors that somebody told you you'd be really good at, but you've known deep down in your heart that's not what I was called to do. And I meet you and we'll talk. At the book table, you'll come up to me and say, hey, my mom always told me I'd be a great lawyer, but I'm on the edge of graduating and going to law school and I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to have that conversation with you. The worst conversation is where people email me and say, hey, I'm a dentist. I've been a dentist for 2 years, and I hate being a dentist. And I knew I didn't want to be a dentist when I was in dental school, but there was too much momentum, and I didn't want to disappoint anybody, so I just kept going. And now I've got $200,000 worth of debt, and the only way to get out of that debt is to continue doing something I wasn't called to do. This is the time in your life where you get to have that hard conversation and get to lean into that. And if you'll recognize that dreaming is about recovery, not discovery, that dreaming is usually a reunion, not a first date, it changes everything. Instead of asking the question, what do I want to be when I grow up? You ask, what have I done in my life that I've loved? And you get this small, personally designed set of results for you. I mean, I got to be on the radio today, and I talked to Andrew, and he said, I used to work in retail, and my dad challenged me about my love of radio, so I came back to school at 21. And there's a million of those stories if you listen for them. And once you realize that that's how God works, you can start to see the small things he uses to change whole lives. And you can see that all around you if you look. I saw that with Mercedes-Benz. You see, Mercedes has this car, the SLR. It's their $500,000 sports car. I don't have one right now. Someday. But they had a problem with it. And see, their problem was they wanted every inch to be amazing, but they couldn't get the ignition to work. Because if you think about it, for the last 80 or 90 years, ignitions have stayed the same, haven't they? I mean, every other part of the car has changed. safety, onboard computers, MPG, like child safety restraints. When I was a kid, and my dad is here, he'll tell you, he's here today joining us, but when I was a kid, my parents would tie me into the back seat of their Volkswagen Beetle Bug with a length of rope. And they'd say, hey, think safe thoughts today. We're gonna be on the highway. Think safe. My kids have like a 19-point safety harness you need to be a Cirque du Soleil acrobat to get into. They have like eyebrow airbags. Like they're very safe. They're in like a bubble of love and plastic. But the ignition hasn't changed, has it? You take your key, you put it in, you turn and you go. But about 10 years ago, manufacturers started changing things. They started doing push-button ignitions. And that's interesting, that's different. But Mercedes-Benz couldn't copy that because other people already had that. The Accord had that, the Camry had that. So the first thing they did was they put their button in the gear stick. And that's interesting, that's a little different, but it wasn't enough. It was the next thing they did that changed everything. Do you know what they did? They took a tiny metal hinge and a metal cover and they put it on top of the button. And do you know what it did to that experience? It changed it from turning on a car into launching a missile. Think about it. Every movie you've ever seen when a hero is up against impossible odds, what's the first thing they do? Flip open that safety, save the world. Hunt for Red October, Crimson Tide, Top Gun, probably even Battleship. I don't know, I'm not gonna watch a movie based on a board game. I'm waiting for Connect 4, the movie. Who will win, red or black? I hope they get Rihanna. I hope they get Rihanna. Oh, she's the greatest. Oh. But that's what our heroes do, right? So suddenly, with a tiny hinge, I'm not turning on a car. I'm launching a missile from my driveway. And there's power and emotion associated with that, isn't there? And I knew Mercedes understood what they had done when I saw their brochure. On one page was a picture of the engine. Probably cost $10 million, 10 years to develop. On the other page, a close-up of the hinge. Probably cost 30 seconds, 3 minutes, $3 to develop. So why did it get the same amount of attention? Because that's where the car changed. That hinge changed everything. So when I talk to students, I beg them, don't get stuck looking for Eureka moments. Listen for those hinge moments. Those tiny moments where you think you know what life's going to be about, you think you know what this semester is going to be, and whoo, God hinges you in a completely different space. You think you know what the next year is going to look like, and then a conversation with a stranger on campus, a song lyric goes, whoo, and hinges you. And if you'll listen and if you'll look, you'll see hinge moments everywhere. I experienced one a few years ago. My daughter Ellie and I were on the couch in Atlanta when we lived there, looking at a book about weather. She'd love to be a meteorologist, even though she says hurricane as hurricane. It's kind of this combo of like a hernia and a hurricane. Like, it's a bad storm. You don't want any part of a hurricane. Oh. And on one of the pages in this book about weather was a story about famine and drought. And there was a picture of a starving African child there. And she said, "What's that, Dad? What's that?" And it's one of those moments where you'd like to kind of have your wife answer that one, like, your mom would love to talk to you about that. But she wasn't there. And so I said, well, that little boy is starving to death. He doesn't have enough food to eat. And then Ellie got kind of quiet. And she said, but that's pretend, right? That's not real, right? Because you see, a 5-year-old can't understand poverty. 5-year-olds don't understand it happens. Teenagers, we learn it does, and then as an adult, you usually get numb to it. But she was still young, and so when she said, that's pretend, right? That's not real, right? I heard her saying, you're not okay with that, are you? Do other people know about that? Are you doing anything? And the truth is, I wasn't. At the time, I had this blog, Stuff Christians Like, and it was just about me. I was really consumed with kind of my brand and my fame. I think fame is the worst drug in Christianity right now. It is wrecking churches and young leaders. It is so toxic, but that's where I was. And so I decided to do something different. So I partnered with this organization, and on a random Monday, I asked the readers of my blog to raise $30,000 to build a kindergarten in Vietnam. And that's a lot of money. That's why pastors, it's hard to ask for money. Pastors do the tithing disclaimer. Have you ever experienced that? Where you go to church and they go, I never talk about money except today. And that's the day you finally got your roommate to come to church for the first time. So you lean over and do your own disclaimer, like, give me one more Sunday. He doesn't always talk about, we don't have mimes every Sunday. Like, that's the Sunday gloves of love come. And they, you can make fun of mimes. They can't yell at you. It's okay. That's a free speaking tip. But it's awkward to ask for money. It changes your relationship. And so we thought it would take us 8 weeks to raise the amount of money, $30,000. Do you know how long it took us? 18 hours. 18 hours, we raised the entire amount. If you didn't read the blog that day, you missed it. And so we realized we had undersized God. Have you ever done that to God? Have you ever gone, God, you're huge, you're massive, you're the creator of all space and time. You're just not as big as my parents' divorce. You're smaller than that. God, you're gigantic, you're so creative. When people say you're boring, I say, look at the platypus or the narwhal. Oh, the unicorn of the sea. If we take it for granted, God's gonna take it back like the unicorn. I'm just throwing that out there, that's a warning. You guys gotta give narwhal, they're here. God, you're just not as big as my major or my job after college. And so we realized we had done that. So we doubled down and raised another $30,000. And last November, my wife and I got to go see these kindergartens. Can you pull up that photo? And here's a picture from one of the kindergartens. And that moment right there started with a question from a 5-year-old on a couch. Do you think I had any idea it would lead there? Of course not. But what a wild card God we serve, where little things like that can lead to changing the world. That's the God you have. So don't get so busy and so distracted that you miss these quiet things he's trying to tell you. I mean, David was at the Goliath situation because he brought lunch. He didn't ride up on a chariot, he did an errand. And so often in our lives, we don't want to do the small things, but so often the small thing is where God's trying to move your life in a big direction. The second thing you need to do, if you're going to dream with God, especially in college, is you need to ignore the haters. You need to ignore the haters. And I didn't think I'd ever have haters. Like, I kind of just thought everybody would love me forever the end. Like, that's kind of how my mom told me things would be. It's not been the case. It has not been my experience. And here's something I learned. Haters only get loud when you do things that matter. Haters only get loud when you do things that matter. If you want to kind of be average, if you want to rock vanilla right into the grave, hate will give you a free pass. Hate won't bother you. You know who never gets rocks thrown at them? People who don't stand up. But if you stand up, the second you do that, other people in your life are going to throw some rocks. And the problem is that most of us experience compliments and hate very different. When somebody gives you a compliment, especially as a Christian, the first thing you do is try to shot block it. Somebody says, hey, I really like that project you did. You go, oh, that was nothing. It was a team effort. No. Just something I do on the side, and you block it. You can't let it land on you for a second. But when somebody criticizes you, when somebody hates on you, what do? You focus on it. You laser in. You go, this person gets me. They understand me. And you start to believe what I call critics math. And critics math is really simple. Here's the formula. 1 insult plus 1,000 compliments equals 1 insult. In the face of 1 insult plus 1,000 compliments, you'll focus on the 1 insult. And I started to see this everywhere. I started to see this in churches. There's a lot of you that are going to be pastors or youth ministers. And I can go to churches right now and go, hey, who here loves what God's doing? Who are the people in the church that love this ministry? And the pastor will go, there's a handful of people that kind of like what I'm doing. And they'll say, hey, who doesn't like the ministry? Who are the parents trying to get the youth minister fired? And the pastor can describe to me what they look like, the last letter they wrote, how thick their mustache is. They know those people intimately. I'm the same way. On Amazon right now, I have, I think, 3 1-star reviews of my book, Quitter. This book right here has 3 1-star reviews, and it has about 175 5-star reviews. Can you guess which ones I have memorized? It's not the 5-star, it's the 1-star. I wouldn't even give this book as a gift. Somebody would waste their time, said Leanne. Hypothetically, I mean, that's just, no. Oh, Leanne! But that's what we do, isn't it? And even famous people struggle with that. There's this guy, Larry David, co-creator of Seinfeld, most successful sitcom in the history of television. Also has a show on right now called Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's on HBO, so don't clap. We're not supposed to know that exists. Don't say Game of Thrones either, or Winter is Coming. Don't do any of those things. Don't mention Flight of the Conchords. I know all the rules. And so Larry David is from New York, but he lives in LA. So he had a homecoming, and he went back to New York for a week. And while he was there, he went to a Yankees game. And during the middle of the game, man, I don't think hell got that loud of a boo. Like, people were like, hell, Yankees! But so he goes to a game at a stadium where people play sports. I won't say which one. And during the middle of the game, they find out he's there. They put his picture up on the big screen. They play the theme song to Curb Your Enthusiasm, and 50,000 people cheer for Larry David. Can you imagine what that moment must have felt like? I mean, I grew up in Boston, and I used to have a friend who had season tickets to the Celtics, and they were 5 rows off the floor. I'm going to stop naming cities and or sports teams. This speech is about to become really general. I saw the sun. Anybody? The sun. Weather, yeah. Salt, wah. And so you had to go through the players' tunnel to get to his seats. And for the briefest of second, when you'd walk out of that tunnel, you felt like everything was there for you. I'd do it 10 times a game. I'd walk out and I'd walk back in, shake it off. I have issues that I need to unpack with a counselor. Probably a father wound. It's not a father wound, Dad. You hugged me lots. But that wasn't for me. This moment was for Larry David. And so at the end of the game, when the night was over, he walked to his car, and somebody drove up next to him in the parking lot, and they rolled their window down. They said, "Hey, Larry, you suck." And then they drove away. Can you guess who he thought about and talked about to the reporter for the rest of the night? Do you know who he talked about? The guy who had yelled at him. Critics' math made 50,000 people disappear. Critics' math made a stadium invisible. I mean, David Copperfield can't do that kind of trick. David Blaine can't pull it off. Chris Angel can't do that. That's my Chris Angel shimmy. It's in the hips because the hips don't lie. It's like a pop culture smorgasbord. But that's what happens to us, and it's going to happen to you, in college or out of college. Some of you, that's already happened to you. Have you had somebody who matters to you say, "How would you ever make money with that major? How is that career ever going to be valuable? It's time to be an adult. How will you ever make money with that?" And so our dreams get smaller, and we believe the critic, and we believe that other people know the best shape of our lives. And so when that happens to you, there's 2 things I want you to do, because you're going to experience hate. You're going to experience criticism. The first is I want you to do what Southwest Airlines does. I love Southwest Airlines. Have you guys ever flown on Southwest? It's great. Southwest is kind of like, it's fun to me. One of the things when I travel, like, have you ever sat next to a Christian who you know is about to witness to you? Like, he's going to try to double convert you. And we don't have any way to be like, "I'm already in." Like, talk to the guy next to you reading 50 Shades of Grey. It's awkward. We need a hand signal like king or something. I wish I had seen her do 50 Shades of Grey. Oh, that would have been great. But that's what happens on planes. And on Southwest, they're very good to their customers. But in the 1990s, they had one customer who would send hundreds of complaint letters. She sent so many, they called her Pen Pal. That was her nickname. And one day, they got one that they couldn't figure out how to respond to. So it made it all the way up to the founder of the company, Herb Kelleher. And he took out his stationery, and he wrote something down. He wrote 4 words to this person. Do you know what he said? He wrote, "We will miss you. We'll miss you. Bounce. We are setting you free to fly on other airlines. Enjoy Delta. They have those little cookies that are delicious. Go on." What if that's how you handled hate? Why do you have to win over the haters? Why do you have to prove your dream, your major, your career to people that don't love you and love what you're doing? So the first thing I want you to be able to do is go, "We'll miss you." And don't act like Jesus didn't do that. Ask the rich young ruler how things went that day when he said to Jesus, "I'm down, except I want to keep all my stuff." How did that go for him? That's the first thing I want you to do is, "We'll miss you." The second thing is do the math the right way. For me, 3 people that hate my book out of all the people that bought it represent 0.008%. So for me to obsess on that would be like if my daughter Ellie came home with a 99.992 on a math test, and I said, "Whew, I thought we were ready for this one, buddy." I mean, man, I guess you can work at Sheetz later, you know? Like, you can pump gas. I know that Lynchburg has Chipotle now. That's nice. I went there yesterday. They gave me guac. It was fantastic. We even got a cookout here now. We're coming up like the Jeffersons. You'd never do that. If you called your parents and said, "Mom, on my finals next week," if you call them and go, "I got a 99.992," and your mom said, Why are we sending you there? Have you been at the fake ski mountain this whole time? Is that what it is? Rug burn? Your mom would never say that. You have the worst parents in the world. So if you experience criticism, I want you to do the math the right way, because what happens is most of us give the people in our life that don't deserve the power, we give the 0.008% of the people in our life all the power for our life. And you've been to a church where it's like that, where one elder poisons the whole experience. You've been in a dorm room like that, or dorm room floor where one person on the floor changes the whole vibe. It's time for us to not let the 0.008% of the people rule our life. Hating is not a spiritual gift. Like, hating on other Christians is not a spiritual gift. You know what no one's ever said in the history of mankind? Hey, that way you mocked other Christians really started a lifelong relationship for Jesus with me. Thank you. Thank you for using the gift of mockery to lead me towards Jesus. Oh, we got a full front hug. Not even a side hug, like maybe even a leg wrap. It's just awkward. It's just, people don't like when you do that. Don't hug that way. That's what I want you to do. I want you to reverse the math. And so if you start to think about that, if you go, okay, I'm going to listen for the little moments. I'm not going to believe this college is the only time you can figure out your dream idea. I'm going to ignore the haters. What do you need to do next? Well, what you need to do next is you need to get started. You need to start now. I'll talk to students and they'll go, I can't wait to hustle after I graduate. No. This is the time to get a head start. And if you don't start, life will just kind of go by. Nobody's ever said life is too slow. And I bumped into this on a plane. I was flying from Dallas to Baltimore, and there was two grandmothers in their late 70s next to me. Grandmothers, woo! Maybe you're cheering for Dallas. I'm so confused right now. And this grandmother sat next to me, and I gave her a copy of Quitter. And I don't do that on every flight, I promise. I don't wear cargo pants full of my books. I'm like, oh, it's in my pocket. Wall Street Journal bestseller. I'll sign it. The value goes up. No pictures, please. It dries my pores. But I gave her a copy of my book, and she started to read it on the plane, which is awkward, because as an author, you can't help but look out of the corner of your eye and be like, is it changing her life right now? Oh my gosh. Because, Quitter's life-changing. Stuff Christians like this book. Do you know what people say to me about this book? They come up to me and go, I love your book. I keep it in my bathroom. It's kind of a compliment. It's a smidge of a compliment. But so I looked at her out of the corner of my eye, and I was like, come on, please get highlighters, multiple colored highlighters, Post-it notes. And after reading for a while, she leaned over to me and she asked me a question I didn't have an answer for. And here's what she said. She said, hey, what do you do when all the excuses you use for not chasing your dream are gone? What do you do when you don't have those anymore, when you're not too busy, when you don't have too many obligations? What do you do? And there was sadness in that question, because for the first time in her life, she was asking, who did God make me to be? And that's my fear, that you and I will get to 80 or 90 and look back on our lives and realize we mortgaged the best years of our lives, 70 years of our lives, doing something we weren't called to do, something God didn't create us to do. And don't for a second think he doesn't create you for unique things. That's the big myth. Remember Paul, who was formerly Saul? So Saul was a hard-driven, aggressive, charismatic guy against Jesus. He meets Christ on the road to Damascus, and he became a quiet, isolated monk who wrote hymns in caves. No, he became a hard-driven, focused, charismatic person for Christ. God doesn't want to turn off those passions you've got, those things you bump into in college. He wants to turn them on in ways they've never been on. That's the God we serve. What a wild card God. I said that last time I was here. He fixes problems with parties. That's the prodigal son story. Who does that? Have you ever had a parent do that? I like to joke about with my dad. I mentioned last time I got caught shoplifting in the 9th grade, which was awesome for the pastor's kid to do. Pastor's kids are only less dangerous than cops' kids because we don't have access to firearms. That's the only difference. Like, I didn't have pistols, because I promised I would have gotten into some trouble. But I always joke with my dad that when they called him from the police station and said, could you come get your son? And they picked me up. I don't remember exactly, but I'm almost positive my dad didn't throw me a party when I got home. Like, Dad, correct me if I'm wrong, I didn't get a robe or like a fatted calf. That was a very different day. Who does that? Who fixes our lives with parties? And that's what I don't want you to miss. I don't want you to leave college never daring to dream with God. I don't want you to leave college with a degree that's just good enough to make you money. Because that gets empty really, really quickly. I don't want you to spend 10 years in a cubicle like I did. And so that's my hope, is that you'll listen for those little moments, that you'll ignore the haters because they're going to come, and that you'll start. Just get started. The only line you and I control is the starting line. We have no control over the finish line. God is going to move your stories in amazing ways that we don't have control over. And that's my hope, is that we'll be part of his adventure, his story, his work. Let's pray. God, thank you for such a fun day where we get to talk about you and who you are and who you made us to be. May we forever remember that we will never outdream you. Even right now, with that small spark in some of our hearts, doubt and fear are coming in and saying, who are you to do that? Just finish your degree, finish the path you've been walking. God, give us the courage to not do that, to not accept average, to not accept ordinary, to not chase somebody else's dream. If there are students in here who inherited their major from a parent or a guidance counselor or a pastor, help us release that. Help us give that back to you, God. Even if it feels cloudy, even if it feels murky, Lord, help us not assume that you want us to just do the safe thing, that you want us to just do the average thing. You didn't send your son on a rescue mission, because that's what Christ was, a rescue mission, to save the ordinary. You sent him for the extraordinary. Amen. Thanks, guys.